Obama took a massive step in further empowering his imperial presidency. You see, ladies and gentlemen, back in the summer 2010, the Democrat Senate couldn't get the 60 Democrats in the Senate to vote for cap and trade. 4 years later, Obama does his own cap and trade model via the bureaucracy. Via the bureaucracy. And you know who gave him the power to do that? The Supreme Court. Here's the irony. Judicial review, which is exercised vigorously and expansively by the courts, is all but non-existent in matters involving congressional delegations to administrative agencies. And this all came about as the courts were packed and gave deference to the New Deal and its progeny. Now, the courts mostly defer to the discretion of Congress and, with few exceptions, uphold administrative actions like those of the EPA to the extent they consider them seriously at all. A lot of times they won't even take them up. And on those occasions when the Supreme Court does exercise judicial review in these matters, it's been known to extend the power of the administrative state, that is, the bureaucracy, even beyond Congress's already broad delegations. I explained this in the Liberty Amendments. For example, in 2007, there was a case called Massachusetts versus EPA. I've talked about this before. By a 5-4 vote, the court actually expanded the EPA's authority to regulate carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, despite the agency's long-held determination that these gases are not pollutants subject to regulation. How can they be pollutants? How many times do I have to say it behind this microphone? I've written it in 3 books. The greatest part of greenhouse gases is water vapor, condensation. Well, they can't control that. That would be a fool's errand. And before you think greenhouse gases are like cyanide, remember all those little greenhouses along the roads and so forth when it gets cold? Or in cold environs? What do they do there? They grow plants. That's what they do there. If we didn't have greenhouse gases, we'd be Mars. We'd be dead. The planet would be an ice cube. Greenhouse gases are part of our atmosphere. And so is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a tiny, tiny percent. I've used this example before. I used it in Liberty and Tyranny. Let me use it again. Imagine there is a stadium with 10,000 seats. 10,000 seats. That's the universe of gases out there. Imagine 2 of those seats represent carbon dioxide. 2. We're destroying our economy. We're destroying our lifestyle. We're destroying our governing system for this. And even the EPA admits on those 2 seats, their efforts, which are preposterous, they say, will affect carbon dioxide to the extent of less than 2%. Is this starting to make sense to you? How absurd this is? That this is really the red movement dressed up as the green movement? That this is an ideology? So it's the Supreme Court that opened the door to an infinite number of agency regulations affecting an endless line of industries, products, and processes. And what's happened today in this proposed regulation, which they're now going to speed through. So somebody says, oh, it'll take a year. No, it won't take a year. It can take 30 days. It can take 60 days. What's happened today is the greatest power grab since Obamacare. It's the greatest power grab since Obamacare. We have the executive branch legislating in ways that Congress, under the control of a supermajority of Democrats, refused to legislate. We have the executive branch dictating to the states how they are going to handle this, giving them a couple of choices to choose from. In the end, we have the executive branch dictating to you and me, to our businesses, to our employers, to our work environment, what it's going to look like. Closing down coal mills, coal mines, closing down what will be steel mills too, and driving up the cost of energy. Now, that won't be seen right away, but it will be seen, and it will be huge, and Obama will be gone off to Hawaii or Martha's Vineyard and out of the presidency, collecting tens of millions of dollars for his speeches. While everybody else has to suffer. Their health care, destroyed. The energy market, destroyed. Citizenry, destroyed. The military, destroyed. The economy, destroyed. Not by any foreign enemy, but from within. From within. I've seen it written in places like the Wall Street Journal that the EPA has used a very little used provision of the Clean Air Act of 1970 to try and expand its authority to regulate CO2. And that will be the legal battle. Well, in part, but you know where the real legal battle is going to be? The court itself. Because the court itself, in more cases than not, in most cases, refuses to intervene in these decisions. You know, our libertarian friends call this judicial activism. We need judicial activism. It's not judicial activism. It is legitimate judicial review. We don't want judicial activism. That's what the original decision in the Massachusetts versus EPA decision was. Judicial activism. Obama's not done. But a couple of points. And by the way, the enviro-statists will never be done. They'll never. That just doesn't end. It's not like they're going to say, okay, we're going to issue this rule. Now we're going to cut our staff by 25%. Our work mostly has been done. No, they're going to increase their staff, increase their budget. Who else can we screw? Who else can we push around? How coercive can we become? Nobody can stop us. Nobody will stop us. We're more powerful than Congress. Congress said no. We say yes. And the executive branch is legislating, which is exactly what Locke and Montesquieu and the framers told us is the definition of tyranny. Did they not? I read it to you. But let's talk about pollution. There's a great piece at The American Commitment by Phil Kerpen. And he cites Julian Simon, who's iconic in libertarian circles. He passed away some years ago. And he says in his classic, The Ultimate Resource, that the greatest pollution killers have all been forgotten. A century ago, most people in the U.S. died of environmental pollution. That is, from infectious diseases such as pneumonia, tuberculosis, and so forth. Humanity's success in reducing these pollutions has been so great that young people today don't even know the names of the great killer pollutions of history, such as typhoid fever, bubonic plague, and cholera. And Kerpen adds, the automobile helped clean up streets previously covered by horse excrement, and indoor plumbing and modern sewers helped eliminate human waste. As recently as 1960, only 22% of the U.S. population was served by municipal water systems. Electricity did away with dirty, old-fashioned home heating. As recently as 1940, about 55% of U.S. households were heated with coal. So as life expectancies increased dramatically and we became much wealthier, we had the luxury to turn our attention to toxic chemicals that had important, though far smaller than old pollution threats, implications for our health. Now we've even moved beyond them. Witness the official embrace of the word stretched past any sensible limits with release of the Obama's administration's new national energy tax, officially styled a rule to regulate carbon pollution. In other words, his point is this is also a backdoor to a massive tax increase, because all these cost increases in energy, they flow throughout the economy. Products, services, utilities, basic needs, basic wants, subsistence. When you raise the price of energy, and you raise it significantly by shutting down sources of energy, by refusing to build pipelines, by regulating now fracking to try and stop it, and I'm going to use these words that no other host is going to use because I've dug into this deeply, by deindustrializing our society, by degrowing our society. That's the word they now use in Europe that they're exporting to this country. When you do those things, you're destroying progress. You're destroying liberty. You know, in order to reverse course, in order to pull us back, you have to attack liberty, because most of us resist this. In the endangerment finding that was the predicate or the pretext for this new rule, the EPA admitted the following. This is from the EPA, quote, "To be clear, ambient concentrations of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, whether at current levels or at projected ambient levels under scenarios of high emissions growth over time, do not cause direct adverse health effects such as respiratory or toxic effects." You have people out there saying, well, it's going to affect people that have breathing problems, you know, asthma and so forth. Has nothing to do with it. Zero. As I've said for years, as I've written in my books, you are exhaling carbon dioxide. Plants are inhaling it through a photosynthesis process. And the plants are creating what? Oxygen for us to breathe, and at the same time, food for us to eat, lumber for us to build our homes and to make our paper, and on and on and on. It's called nature. Yet the EPA, having said what I just read here, went on to characterize carbon dioxide, a colorless, odorless gas that is essential for life on planet Earth, as pollution. It's never been pollution. It can't be pollution. So what was the basis? On the basis of computer models projecting global warming impacts literally hundreds of years from now. And they preferred to leave out the dioxide because carbon itself sounds dirtier. On this most speculative basis, this administration intends to impose thousands of dollars of higher energy prices on each and every household and cause, over a period of time, millions of employed Americans to lose their jobs. Despite the fact, as the New York Times itself conceded, the president's plan will barely nudge the global emissions. And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to have to do more. I've told you before what's going to happen. The Obamacare law was a revolution. That empowers the federal government to do things that no free republic has the power to do, to force us to buy things, to force us to ban things. And so what's next? Well, what's next is controlling you more than they already do. High-level social engineering. Limiting the number of cars you can have, limiting the type of cars you can have, limiting the amount of driving you can do, your access to gasoline. It'll be rationed one day. Limiting the size of your home. Monitoring your heat and your air conditioning. And on and on and on. In the name of